The $3 trillion machine that Jobs and Woz built just lost its chief architect. Tim Cook, the man who turned supply chain logistics into a weapon of mass profit, has officially stepped down. Let's face it though, for over a decade, Apple hasn't really been that product company that we all know and loved. It's really just turned into this margin squeezing, but operational powerhouse. That spreadsheet era is kind of hitting the wall though. iPhone sales are flattening. The AI arms race is quite literally turning Siri into a relic of the past. The board said we got to pump the brakes, okay? And it's time to usher in a new legacy of leadership. Can the one Silicon Valley king return to that number one spot over Google and Nvidia and become the world's first $5 trillion company? Jeez, that's a big number. Hey, this is supply demand. Let's get into it. Roll the intro. Welcome to Supply Demand. My name is Julian Scott, supply chain strategist with almost 2 decades of experience within some of the top Fortune 50 companies here in the USA. I have a master's in project management, and I use the knowledge from these two worlds to craft the insights needed to help you see clearly through the ambiguity surrounding different aspects of finance and culture. Build the right knowledge base and systems so you can take advantage of the growth opportunities in your life, whether they be in your career, personal life, or in the market. So let's get into this Apple situation. Let's talk about John Ternus, the new Apple CEO. The first question, why? That's what I'm wondering. Why now? And I'm sure you are too. Well, let's talk about it.
That was awesome.
This is John Ternus, the mechanical engineer preparing to take the wheel at Apple, one of the most valuable companies in the world.
When I first got to Apple, it was my second job out of college. And the first time I walked through those doors, it was exhilarating and intimidating all at once. To be honest, I wasn't sure I belonged there.
The 25-year Apple veteran who worked under co-founder Steve Jobs will become CEO on September 1st. He's the current senior vice president of hardware engineering, who the company calls instrumental in products like the iPad, AirPods, and Mac.
The team here at Apple stands on the shoulders of giants. I see where we are now, and I just know things are going to keep getting better and better.
Because of the all-in operations model you could think of from Tim Cook, it is starting to really be tapped out. All right. Tim Cook is a savant when it comes to supply chain and manufacturing. He served, quite literally as the COO before he was the CEO, and so he is known within those Apple walls as the king of supply chain. He optimized the world of manufacturing, moving from hubs to different places, global logistics supply chain, making sure that all of their procurement operations were flowing properly, how they handled contracts, where they decided to make things, how Tim also positioned the consumer to think that they were getting new products, even though they were actually reusing components from previous products. Tim learned, he knew all about how to really milk the services ecosystem, right? He may have flipped that iPhone 15 like 14 times, but in doing so, he did take the company to new heights in terms of revenue. But in this new era of things, you can't optimize your way into that next generation of wealth. These AI companies are coming in full force. And let's be honest, Tim was not able to really do the things necessary, some of which may have gone against some of his personal beliefs and people he wanted to partner and work with. We're not really here to talk about that side of things so much. I think there's other takes out there from other content creators you should definitely listen to and check out. But, Tim wasn't able to secure the strategic partnerships, we'll say, quite necessary to be able to, I think, compete as fast and as fervently as Apple needed to, or needs to, in this new generative AI world. So look at the sales history, right? When we see the marquee product that is the iPhone starting to flatten and bottom out, it causes some concern. Just taking a look at the graphic here that we have on the screen, we can see the revenue story. You would say that things look great with the latest iPhone 17. It had a breakout year, up 23% from the previous model. But if you look a little deeper at the details, something that I actually took the time to do was parse out and break out those relative sales by units. And this data here is covering all of Q1, so we can kind of compare apples to apples. So how these things were selling over that first 3-month period of the quarter from the previous releases to the current one. And what we notice is the growth is far less aggressive than the sales performance would have you to believe. If you actually look at that relative sales by unit number, it's only about an 8% increase on the iPhone 17 from the 16. That is not quite flat, but it's not quite great either. It definitely isn't the double-digit growth a company like Apple would be looking for from product generation to product generation. So this is, I think, where John Ternus can really step in and turn the tables and bring some fresh innovation to the table. In direct contrast to Tim Cook, John's an engineer. He is a product guy from the specifications of how things are built and how they function and how they will work for the consumer. Very much in contrast to Tim's model of margin, growth, and efficiency for the company. Both of them ultimately want to build the best product. Tim's way of going through that is going through finding the most tried and true methodologies to do something. Look at long-standing partnerships that they have with brands like Samsung for display technology, and how Apple was a little wary of using some of the newer technology in their glass until it was proven out, and then they switched into OLED formats via their Retina style displays. John is going to probably take a much more radical approach to things like this. He's going to use the latest of engineering and industry standards to say, hey, how do we reconfigure what we think about and what an iPhone truly is, what the consumer thinks it is, and how do we usher in the next generation of that specific product line into the future. And I think he's going to do this across the entire portfolio. Apple knows it doesn't want to become the next IBM, right? A legacy giant company that's efficient but irrelevant, looking for government support to keep the doors open, because it's just too big to fail. And so we got to keep that ship afloat because of what it means to the U.S. economy, especially within the S&P 500 and its position there as the number 3 top company in terms of market cap, sitting around $4 trillion. Thus, this is a shift. This is going to be a shift for the company in terms of, going from that margin logic to alpha logic. This is all about signal. No noise. Okay, how do we cut through and present the world the product that they might not even know that they need yet, right? And I think Ternus, his mission is going to be just that, fix Apple's innovation pipeline. He is inheriting this massive hardware pipeline, which is great. The tools needed to be successful from a build perspective are there, right? We know Apple can make great products, but can they continue to make products that people care about and want to use on a daily basis? Okay, so he has to do what Jobs did. Honestly, he was so famous for bringing the soul back into the product and giving it fresh life, going from the Apple II computer and transitioning into the Mac line, the introduction of the iPhone in itself, right? Reconfiguring the way people even think about going from clamshell phones into slab-based phones that are truly just supercomputers now in your pocket. I mean, you can literally do anything on your phone today. So Turnus is going to have to dive into that Jobs bag, bring some of that legacy back to the company to excite people about the product. Make sure it stands out in this post-AI world. Without access to the right information and being surrounded by people on the same mission as you, it can be quite difficult to get rid of those bad habits that lead us to debt traps like high credit card debt. That is exactly why I built the Skeleton Crew, Supply Demand's private membership platform. A skeleton crew isn't about being understaffed or not having the right resources. It's actually quite the opposite. A skeleton crew and supply chain is about having the most essential people required to keep a massive operation running. Not any extras, not any hanger-oners or passengers, but builders, highly skilled operators who know exactly what levers to pull to get things done. And that is exactly the type of community that we are building. Our membership isn't about nickel and diming people to say, buy our latest finance course, buy our latest this and that. No, this is about giving you access to the blueprints and the systems and strategies you need to solve the issues we are discussing today. Are you having a problem with high interest credit card debt? A lot of people are. But look, inside the Skeleton Crew, we have AI-powered tools that get you exactly what you need to master your monthly budget, to get your strike plan together, to tackle that high-interest credit card debt. If you want to move from being a consumer to a true architect of your life success, hit the link in the description or check us out directly at supply-demand.live and get access to the Skeleton Crew. Take advantage right now of our early adopter rate and go ahead and jump right in and join the crew. With that being said, back to the video. All right, before we wrap here today, I want to make sure you get your free supply drop for the week. Shout out to the Skeleton Crew if you want to go deeper on topics like this. But let's go ahead and get into it. Your free supply drop for today, watch the margin to magic ratio. Watch the margin to magic ratio. In any tech company, the moment that a CEO mentions operational efficiency, hey, it's time to do more with less. All right. It causes sometimes some user friction. The innovation cycle is dead, is the signal that people are getting when they hear these type of messages. And when you're evaluating your next investment or career move, look at the leadership background. If the MBAs are being replaced by engineers, like we see with the Turner situation, where we are coming in and replacing someone who's very much focused on an efficiency model for someone who we think is going to be focused much more on a innovation engineering model, right? It's a signal. That is a signal to us. Something is coming. Something is changing, okay? So it's a signal that massive R&D spend may be coming. It's a signal that CapEx is going to be shifting in a different way. And so it's important for us to look for these signals, okay, and position ourselves to be in the path of that capital. We want to be where the money is flowing into, not where the spend is leaving, right? We want to be at the receiving end of that capital engine, not at the back of the line, watching everything deplete away from us. So expect things to stay flat, right? Expect things to maybe even pull back a little bit in the short term. Okay, so when we're talking about market price and market conditions, if we look at it from that perspective, we may see, Apple be a little stagnant. There's usually a lot of excitement when announcements like this come because it's change and it's different, right? And so we may see a pop and then followed by a bit of stagnation, okay? But that is just the market waiting. Please believe institutional investors are setting new price targets and they are just waiting to see if those innovation beliefs are starting to materialize through the strategic actions of the company. Microsoft is seeing a very similar thing with the introduction of Asha Shara, the new CEO of Xbox's gaming division, right? And so there's a little bit of a pop, there's some excitement. We saw a little bit of a pullback, and now things have stabilized and they're actually seeing quite a bit of a lift due to some other factors as well. So you can expect that same type of trend beyond just market price action, but in your personal lives as well, right? Companies often, when they're going into a new season, will, trim the fat. We've seen some of the stories out there, and we've done our own content here about layoffs and things like that going on in different companies and different industry verticals, right? So that's a sign for you. Be in front of it. Don't just be the person complaining on the sideline. Get in front of it. So what could that look like? From a stock perspective, that could look like dollar cost averaging at a higher capital allocation, right? This is an investment that you've been looking at. It's a strong company. You know it. You're seeing some, flat movement in the stock. Hey, let's continue to up that allocation. Even if we're seeing light pullbacks, let's continue to up that allocation and let's get ahead of the pop. In the career sense that we've been saying, this could look like intentionally slowing down, right, on the hand raising, the me, pick me, right? You might want to slow down because you don't want to necessarily raise your hand and take on too much that it doesn't enable you to be flexible when new opportunities are showing up. You want to actually use this time, look for where things are moving and say, all right, what are the skills and maybe even the certifications that I need to acquire to position myself to be ready to take advantage of this next wave of things, right? So maybe this is a great time to look into that cybersecurity certification. Maybe this is a great time to take that night class at the local university or state college, to get those one-off deep dive courses in artificial intelligence and how it will work within my business vertical. Maybe this is a great time to read some of those books and some of that strategic knowledge. Maybe this is a great time to join the skeleton crew, right? And get with a community of people moving in the same direction as me. Maybe it's a great time for that. So we're looking for the patterns. We're looking for where things are going, and you just want to be ready to shift, okay, into a position that it might not be super sexy right now, not today, but once the money starts to flow, once that innovation cycle starts to ramp up and come out of the foundational norming, storming, space and goes into that acceleration mode, you will be well positioned to take advantage of that over that next 3 to 5 year period and position yourself as a winner. So, what are your thoughts on this Apple situation? Let me know in the comments down below. The Tim Cook era is done. John Ternus is here. It is a little bit of a gamble, I think, for the company, but I think it is the right one. I think in the long term, we're going to see that this was the right move. So, tell me what you guys think in the comments. Don't just watch the shift, obviously. Understand the mechanics behind it, like we talked about in that supply drop today. You got to know, you got to see where it's going. You got to be in front of the play, not behind it, so you're ready to take advantage of it, all right? And if you need help with that, remember you can hit that link in the description or visit us over at supplydemand.live. Join the crew today. My name is Julian Scott. This is Supply Demand. And until next time, guys, peace.